officially getting a P. Diddy documentary on Netflix. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks, you will have seen the crazy rumors flying around about P. Diddy. But did you know that 50 Cent is working with Netflix to produce a tell-all documentary? So it's a little bit confusing, but what are the facts that we know about what's been going on? We know that P. Diddy was recently arrested in New York and has been charged with multiple serious offences, including substance possession, firearms offences, trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in work. Officers recently raided his properties and found over 1,000 bottles of baby oil. He could be looking at a prison sentence of around 15 years, and that's just on the charges that we've got so far. It's thought that multiple women have come out recently to accuse the rapper of SA. Eminem's rap song titled Fuel appears to use clever wordplay to allude to this. Official legal documents allege that P. Diddy, real name Sean Combs, abused, threatened and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his desires, protect his reputation and conceal his conduct. It's believed this may have started back in 2008. There are also super disturbing videos circulating online, like this one where he stood with 15-year-old Justin Bieber. He states that he could not disclose what the pair were up to, but he said that it was every 15-year-old's dream. He's accused of using his status as a wealthy, well-known musician to create, quote, a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in trafficking, forced labour, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice.
You ever heard about the show The Twilight Zone? I heard about it, but I've never seen it. In 1982, The Twilight Zone was going to make a movie. That show went completely wrong. There was going to be this scene where the actor Vic Morrow was going to be carrying two children, right? Which was a boy and a girl. And their names were, I don't want to butcher her name, but I'm going to just say it, Mika Din Lee and Renee Shin Yi Chen. The whole scene was they were going to be running away from a helicopter in like some not too deep water. He was supposed to be carrying both of the children. In that time, they wouldn't really follow protocols. The way they filmed wasn't really that safe. Barely any CGI at that time, bro.
Yeah, so they want to do everything like practical?
So they had a helicopter in this scene.
Oh gosh.
The helicopter was 12 to 20 feet up high. So that's mad close, bro. 12 feet, bro, is like a basketball hoop. So they were doing the scene, it was regular. He ended up dropping the girl. Then a firework ended up going off. It shot onto the helicopter. The helicopter got out of control. It ended up falling to where they were. It decapitated
The actor?
the actor and the boy, and it ended up just crushing the little girl.
What the
The director and like everybody who was involved in that movie,
crew?
was like facing like legal consequences and shit. But specifically the director, which his name was John Landis.
This is Perfection, one of the worst videos on the dark web you should never go looking for explained. Okay, so Perfection is a dark web video nobody should go looking for or even want to see. The video shows a woman peeling her nose and entire face off with a potato peeler, with literally zero expression or pain on her face throughout the entire time doing it. After she completely peeled off her face and nose, her jaw was just hanging down because there was no support from the cheeks anymore. There is a story about 3 friends who watched the entire Perfection video and 2 of them ended up dying. Many reports say that while watching the Perfection video, it somehow hypnotizes you and you end up doing what the girl did to herself and dying. But luckily for all of us, this video is literally impossible to find. It's extremely hard to find on the dark web, which means it's virtually impossible to find it on the normal web. This is honestly a video I would even stay curious on, because it comes from the dark web for starters, and it's extremely and utterly awful. Nobody knows who the girl is or why she's doing this to herself, and nobody knows who even made it. But the stories surrounding the video saying people get hypnotized and end up peeling their own face off and dying make it 100 times more scary, and should make you not want to watch it or even look for it. Perfection is regarded as one of the most unsettling and disturbing videos on the internet, and the mysterious origin and story of it make it truly an internet mystery.
Police have arrested a Chucky doll for threatening members of the public with a knife. This month, police in Mexico arrested a doll. Terrifyingly, they had been made aware of a Chucky doll who, along with its owner, were threatening the public in Monclova. If you're not already aware, the doll comes from the 1988 film Child's Play. In the movie, the serial killer turns into the doll, which then begins a terrifying crime spree. The owner of the doll has only been identified as Carlos N. He was reportedly scaring the public with the doll, threatening them with a knife and demanding money off them. Both Carlos and the doll were charged with disturbing the peace and putting others' integrity at risk. The doll was handcuffed and taken to the police station. They both had mugshots taken, and there has been some controversy over whether or not the officers were taking their job seriously. The police officer who put cuffs onto the Chucky doll has been reprimanded.
The Haiti orphan smuggling case is a really bizarre one, so let's talk about it. On January 12, 2010, a massive earthquake hit Haiti. Thousands died, thousands were left without their homes. And after hearing about this earthquake, a group of 10 American Baptist missionaries from Idaho set off to head down there. So this group was associated with something called the New Life Children's Refuge. It was a group dedicated to finding homes for orphans. Now, after the earthquake, the New Life Children's Refuge leased a hotel in the Dominican Republic, where they intended on bringing orphans, according to their mission statement. So these missionaries flew to Haiti on January 22nd, and on January 26th, they had gathered a group of 40 children and they headed for the Dominican Republic. However, when they tried to cross the border, the missionaries were arrested. As it turns out, they didn't have the proper paperwork, and they had literally just been attempting to steal these children from their home country. This is really interesting now. These missionaries claim that all of these children were orphans. They had asked these kids if they had parents, where they had come from, and apparently they had all told them they're orphans. But when the kids were questioned at the border, it turned out that almost none of them were orphans. They all had families, they didn't know who these people were, and they had literally been taken. According to these children's parents and relatives, the missionaries had told them that after the earthquake relief efforts were through, they could come back and get their kids and bring them home. However, WikiLeaks leaked some documents relating to this, which clearly showed that the missionaries' mission statement was adoption. So they were planning on giving these kids away or rehoming them. But here's where things get incredibly weird. So in the days following the group's arrest, a man named Jorge Puello came forward and stated he was representing some of the missionaries. Jorge claimed that he was a lawyer, but it was later found out he's not a lawyer. And Jorge later admitted that at the time he was being questioned and investigated for participating in sex trafficking in El Salvador. He was also wanted for smuggling people across the US-Canadian border. Eventually, Jorge served time in Canada and the United States, and it's still really unclear what his whole deal with these missionaries was. So this is already bizarre, right? Like, what were these missionaries doing? They were trying to literally kidnap these children out of the country. They told the parents that they were going to bring them back, but clearly they stated they wanted to have them adopted. They lied about certain things. They lied about the kids being orphans, and they clearly just weren't being truthful. Well, things got even weirder when Bill Clinton inserted himself into the case. With everything going on at the time, he stated that they needed to find a solution to this quickly, because all those missionaries had been charged with kidnapping. Keep in mind, they had attempted to, according to the law, kidnap 33 children. Now, eventually, most of these people were freed and sent back to the United States, never served any time for any of this weird behavior. One woman named Laura Silsby got 6 months in prison there, but she was found guilty, sentenced to her time that had already been served, and she was let go. This is a really weird case. What do you guys think about all this? I know WikiLeaks inserted itself and leaked some documents because they believed that there was something weird going on here, but I just don't really know what it is, and I only like to make assertions if I have evidence. I am curious to hear your thoughts, though, in the comment section, because this is just really a strange story.
Do you guys remember the case of Riker Webb and how he survived 2 days alone in the woods after going missing? Well, the same thing just happened to this little girl, and it's a crazy story. This is Oakland Schweter. She's a 6-year-old little girl who was autistic and mostly nonverbal, and she disappeared from her family's home in South Bank, British Columbia last Thursday. Oakland was last seen at around 6 that night in front of her home, but after this, she vanished. Her family began looking for her right away and immediately called 911. A massive search was launched involving multiple different agencies, hundreds of volunteers, helicopters, drones, and police dogs. And when I say massive, I mean this was one of the largest searches in northern BC's history. But at first, nothing was found, and this was really concerning because Burns Lake is not really that far from the family's home. And according to Oakland's family, she likes to crawl into small spaces and hide. With the weather dropping into the low 30s at night, each day she was missing was crucial. All hope was about to be lost, but on Sunday, 3 days later, Oakland was found deep in the BC wilderness. She was found in an area that had already been previously searched, and she somehow somehow survived 73 hours alone. This is the moment when Oakland was found. In the video, you can see Oakland's mom running into the woods, and she then comes walking back out with Oakland in her arms. She was reportedly in great condition considering the circumstances. She had no major injuries, and when she was found, she kept saying the word home over and over again. Oakland was then taken to the hospital where she remains today. Authorities believe that she wandered off and just couldn't find her way back, and they believe that since she was found in an area that had already been searched, that she had been roaming the forest the entire time she was missing. And while she's not able to tell anybody what really happened to her, her parents are just glad that she's home, safe and sound.
This is the moment a man confessed to killing his mum live on TV. A 50-year-old man has confessed live on TV to killing his mum as he spoke to a journalist outside of his home. Lorenzo Carbone lives in Modena in Italy. Just a week ago, his mum was found deceased in her bed by her daughter. Her daughter was obviously absolutely mortified and rang police. They determined that the 80-year-old woman named Loretta Leverini had been strangled to death. Now, no one knew who could have committed such a horrific crime until her son appeared outside of the apartment. Journalists were actually outside at the time filming the residence. They started interviewing Lorenzo about the death of his mother and were stunned when he started to confess to the crime live on air. He broke down in tears and was visibly sweating and stated, "I couldn't stand it any longer, I couldn't manage her, I don't know why I did it." He then told them that he tried different methods of killing her and eventually settled on using lace. He appeared to surrender and be compliant with police and was then arrested.
In June 1997, Billy Bob Harrow Jr. got extremely lucky. Let me explain. He became a multimillionaire overnight after winning the $31 million Texas lottery jackpot. This was amazing, especially since before he won this, his life was full of financial struggles, and he, his wife, and 3 children battled every day to make ends meet. So winning this changed the family's life. Billy quit his job and took the family on a trip to Hawaii and generously donated to his church and helped out friends and family. However, not everything was perfect. You see, Billy's newfound wealth led to a lot of his old friends and peers asking him for money and help on a daily basis. This forced Billy to change his phone number and things just kept getting worse. His life began to slowly unravel, leading to him separating from his wife. On May 22nd, 1999, just shy of the 2-year anniversary of his big win, Billy Bob Harrow Jr. sadly ended his own life. Billy had expressed his unhappiness to a financial advisor shortly before his passing, and he said, "Winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me."
The girls that still watch reality TV shows, there was this show called The Swan back in like 2004. Those days they would come out with like some crazy unhinged shows or whatever. Like the concept of it was taking ugly women or ugly ducklings as they called them and
Give a makeover.
they would give them a shit ton of plastic surgery through a 3-month span. Basically be in solitary confinement because they wouldn't be allowed to look at mirrors for the 3 months. Only have 10-minute phone calls a week from loved ones and stuff. The contestants wouldn't be allowed to say what they want in the plastic surgery. Whatever the doctors gave them, they would just have to be okay with
Like
the
a
end.
test subject.
She will receive a brow lift, mid-facelift, fat removal from under her eyes, a nose job, a corner lip lift, fat injections in her lips, and a chin lift. For her body, she will receive breast augmentation, liposuction on her abdomen and thighs, as well as her calves and ankles to feminize her legs.
Another fucked up thing was there was a girl, her name was Lori Arias, and she just went in for a tummy tuck because she had lost 150 pounds, but she ended up being the most procedures out of everybody. She got a facelift, eyebrow lift, eye lift, breast implants, butt lift, mad shit, bro. And then whenever they revealed the way she would look at the end, because they have them look at a mirror, so they can see the reactions. She saw herself on the camera. She stayed composed. I think she did tear up a little bit, but then after, when she went to the back, she was screaming at the producers saying like, "Yo, I want my face back. Like, what the fuck did y'all do to me?" And then after that,
This young man was murdered and eaten by his friends, and this is a massive trigger warning. What I'm about to explain happened in Bangladesh on August 28th, 2023. The boy on the right who is taking the selfie's name is Shabli, and he was the victim of this disturbing crime, and everyone else you see are the killers. But Shabli was the manager of the farm they all worked on, and one day they all got into a very big argument, and a couple days after the argument, these so-called friends did the unthinkable. They all went to where Shabli was at and then kidnapped him and asked him for money from his parents. Shabli's parents ended up giving them money, and after doing so, the kidnappers assured them, that Chablis would be returned home safely by morning, but that did not happen. They ended up killing Chablis and then cooking his flesh and meat and eating him because Chablis saw their faces. The Bangladesh police interrogated a number of suspects, one of whom confessed and showed them the area where Chablis had been killed. Police searched the area but found only fragments of Chablis' bones as well as his skull. On September 10, 2023, Umung Ching Marma was arrested as the suspected mastermind behind the crime, and the following day when he was taken to the crime scene, an angry mob of villagers surrounded the police vehicle and then savagely lynched him to death. Umung Ching Marma had killed Chablis one day after the kidnapping, before even contacting the parents, which just makes this even more disturbing. He then completely dismembered the body, separated the flesh from the bones, and then spread it both throughout the forest in order to eliminate all traces of the crime. Now, many believe and thought that the suspects had confessed to having cooked and eaten the flesh to reduce the retrievable evidence even further. However, on October 1st, the police denied this, declaring that while the flesh of the body was thrown apart, there was no information on meat eating. But honestly, who will ever really know? I can't believe that friends would do this to each other over some money and an argument. It's absolutely sickening, and may Chablis rest in peace.
She disappeared after running away from her apartment barefoot in a rainstorm, only to be found 2 months later under bizarre circumstances. This is the disturbing case of Kaylin Louder. Kaylin was a 30-year-old social worker who lived with a roommate in a condo in Murray, Utah. Her family described her as being the most non-judgmental person ever and was a true friend to everyone. And she loved animals, especially her pug Phyllis. September 27th, 2014 was a day like any other. Kaylin had called her mom like usual and was cleaning her house and working on her resume, as she had been recently let go from her job at a private boys' school. But just the night before and earlier that day, Kaylin had called 911 a couple of times thinking that someone had broken into her house. In the 911 call, which I'll play shortly, you can hear her roommate, who is also home, and she's questioning what Kaylin is saying. Although Kaylin is adamant that someone is in their house even though she can't see them and can only hear them, the roommate says that the deadbolt is still locked and that it would be impossible for someone to have broken in.
They're stealing from my house. Get the out of my house. Shut up.
Were they saying anything?
Yeah, I heard someone say, hey, go in there, so there's obviously two of them. Don't do that, Chelsea. The door's still locked. It's locked. They must have a key or something. Why is the door still locked? Well, I can't explain that, but I heard two people talking.
The Murray Police Department responded to the call but found no evidence of a break-in. At around 7 p.m., Kaylin is caught on her condo's security footage walking her dog Phyllis for hours. She is alone except for her dog, but is having a conversation. What was said is unknown. After letting Phyllis back inside, Kaylin is then seen walking away from her apartment in only a tank top and shorts, and she had no shoes on. This is especially odd considering this was all happening during a massive rainstorm, so she was getting soaked and must have been really cold. This is the last known footage of her before she completely disappeared. A massive search was launched, but it seems like Murray PD didn't take the case too seriously and kind of painted Kaylin in a bad light, saying she was acting delusional, having an animated conversation with herself. You get the picture. Kind of making it seem like she left on her own free will under a delusional state. They basically said there wasn't much they could do since she was an adult, and that was that. And there would be no updates in this case until 2 months later. On December 1st, West Valley City work crews were inspecting a drainage pipe at the Jordan River near 3300 South and 1200 West. They spotted something barely sticking out of the water in the middle of the river underneath a bridge. And when they looked closer, they found that it was a body that was partially covered by plants. Okay, go to part 2. This is part 2 of the disturbing case of Kaylin Louder. When police arrived to the scene, they found that the body was severely decomposed. So at first, they didn't know the age or even the gender of this person. But after an autopsy was performed, authorities found that the body belonged to Kaylin. But because of how decomposed she was, they were unable to determine a cause of death. Murray PD said that there was no evidence to suggest foul play. So as of today, her manner of death remains undetermined 10 years later. But there are so many things that don't add up in this case and her mysterious disappearance, like how exactly she ended up in the Jordan River. Where she was found was approximately 6 miles away from her condo in Murray, so there are grates surrounding the river near her apartment, making it nearly impossible to just fall in, and she would have had to walk or run really far to end up where she did. Another thing that has never really been explained was her behavior the day she went missing. Kaylin had no history of mental illness, but her walking around outside in the pouring rain and calling 911 like she did was out of character for her, according to her family. She left behind her phone, keys, purse, and most importantly Phyllis, so it just doesn't make sense how or why she ended up in the river. There have been a couple of theories as to what could have happened to Kaylin. One theory being that she died in her condo that night and was moved to the Jordan River after the fact. But from everything that I can find, there is no footage of her re-entering her condo after walking away that day. Another theory comes from a user in the Facebook group dedicated to Kaylin. I'm gonna blur out this user's name and picture because I don't want to put her on blast. But basically, she left a comment stating that a man who was being investigated in the disappearance and death of Kaylin had also held her, this user, against her will and had almost killed her. This man, who has never been publicly identified, reportedly moved to California after being interrogated and has a violent history. This user states that he even owned a condo in the same building as Kaylin. But what's odd is that while Kaylin was still missing, he hung a giant banner with her information on it at one of his properties in Clearfield, Utah. He claimed to have never met Kaylin but wanted to help find her. But it's just odd because Clearfield is about 40 miles away from where she disappeared. So I don't know how much that would have helped, and to insert yourself like that, it's just kind of giving a weird vibe. This user also goes on to say that this man owned another house about a half-mile from where Kaylin's body was found, so the whole thing is just bizarre. Like I said, this man has never been publicly identified, but he apparently has a violent history and comes from a lot of money. It's now been 10 years, and whatever happened to Kaylin remains a mystery. Her family believes that there is more to the story and that her death was not an accident. If you have any information about this case, please contact the number on the screen.
Warning for you guys. It's called The Girl in the Basement.
Never seen this.
It's about a girl named Elizabeth Fritzl, and for 24 years she was locked up in a basement, tortured by her father, Joseph Fritzl. In 1956, he ended up meeting a woman who ends up being his wife. Her name was Rosemary. He ended up giving Rosemary 7 kids, and he specifically grew obsessed with Elizabeth. Wherever he would go, Elizabeth had to be by his side. At age 11 is when
It all started.
He started sneaking into her room, and as she got older, when she hit like 17, 18, Joseph started realizing that she's gonna become an adult and I'm eventually gonna lose control over her. So he lured Elizabeth down to the basement, put chloroform on a rag, put it on her face until she knocked out. Ended up handcuffing her and put her all the way in the back of this prison, this cellar he was building this whole time specifically for her. For the next 4 to 5 years, Joseph would come down there, give her basic necessities for her to survive. Also, constantly. After, in 1988, Elizabeth would get pregnant with Joseph's kid or whatever. She was telling Joseph to bring her to a hospital so she could at least give birth at the hospital. Joseph was not letting that happen. He was like, nah,
Fuck that shit.
if I do, he's gonna get caught. So what he did was he just threw a book about pregnancy, told her to read it, gave her a scissor to cut the umbilical cord. She did end up giving birth to the child. For the next several years, he ended up impregnating her with 6 more kids.
How come none of her siblings or anybody, like, how did they not realize this shit was going on?
It's because he was...
So I just received this spooky looking box from Paramount Plus in the mail to promote their new movie, Apartment 7A. I'm really excited for this film, but yeah, it's got some really interesting looking packaging on this thing. I brought a razor up here. Oh, alright. So I did need the razor. Hopefully nothing evil comes flying out. What sense is a guest room without a guest to stick in there?
Who's my guest in this? It's me.
Little note to the neighbor. Rosemary. Oh shit, this is a prequel to Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, really?
I didn't even know that. So we got Rosemary's Popcorn, Rosemary's Salted Caramel. Dude, this is pimpin', man. No way. I got ghoulish gummies and spooky M&Ms. This is my type of box. Holy shit, we got a baked good in here. Now this, I don't think I've ever gotten a baked good in the mail. This is super pimp. Old-fashioned spice cookie and a rosemary honey biscuit. Pampered me here. Little box too. Let's see what's in here. Of course, they're not just good, they're devilishly good. Dude, this is pimpin', man. I'm like, dude, this is sick. Damn, this is sick, dude. Little Bramford, the apartments from the film. Ooh, some Bramford socks, dude. Let's go. Once again, this is pretty pimp. In the grand scheme of things, it's better than dead. Oh, thank God. Look at spiritless, non-alcoholic cocktail. Now that is wonderful because if you guys know, I've been sober almost a full year, so that's super kind of them to include something that's not alcoholic.
That looks good too.
Ooh, and you got some garnishes? Or what, accoutrements?
Garnish.
Yeah, I don't know what accoutrement exactly means.
Give it a sniff.
I don't know what it is. Ooh, it's Midnight Woods. You know, I'm a fan of the good old Midnight Woods.
We spent lots of
We
time.
spent a lot of time out there. I got 2 crystal cut whiskey glasses. Those things are beautiful. For all the whiskey I will not drink. And then
another baked good.
Oh, dude, check this shit out. Dude, they went all out for this. Devil's food muffin.
Ooh.
Now that's fucking evil. I won't be eating that. And then I guess to finish it out, you got these 2 little retro matchbooks. That's super cool.
That's sick. The Bramford.
The Bramford. This is the roll of a lifetime. At the very end, it's the ingredients to make the old-fashioned, which I feel like we have to do. Well, should we go make it?
P. Diddy rabbit hole is actually so much darker than I ever imagined. Even more disturbing videos are resurfacing on the internet. Now, a lot of people are asking, what did P. Diddy actually do? I'm going to be breaking down the charges against him and what people are claiming he did. I'm also going to talk about those disturbing videos and what we know about them. P. Diddy, real name Sean Combs, is a well-known rapper and music producer. He was very well known back in the 90s and 2000s and was making a lot of music with a lot of famous people. He's good friends with Jay-Z, Beyonce, and the Kardashians. On the 16th of September this year, he was arrested in New York. He's now facing a criminal trial after being charged with very serious offences. Multiple women have accused him of SAing them. The rapper Eminem also appeared to accuse him of SA in his rap song Fuel. So here are the 3 main serious charges against him. So firstly is racketeering conspiracy. So what does that mean? In simple terms, it's a pattern of illegal activity for profit. This could be any kind of organised crime. It's often carried out through intimidation or extortion. This could get him life in prison. Then there's the charge of trafficking by force, fraud or coercion. This is actually a form of modern slavery. This could potentially get him a 15-year sentence. Then there's transportation to engage in P or S work. This basically means forcing or bribing somebody to engage in S work. This usually carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in jail. He's been accused of doing a lot of things in official legal documents, including, quote, he abused, threatened and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his S desires, protect his reputation and conceal his conduct. If you've seen some of the leaked videos and images from his so-called parties, it will come as no surprise that he is accused of hiring male and female S workers to perform for hours on end, often intoxicated or under the influence of substances, at these sessions called freak-offs. These allegedly went on for hours and he's accused of arranging and filming these. Victims have also come out to accuse the rapper of using substances to keep partygoers obedient and to comply with his demands. Roughly 1,000 bottles of baby oil were seized from his properties recently. His lawyer claimed that the reason that he had so many bottles of baby oil is that he just liked to buy in bulk. Documents also allege that the rapper used violence and threats of violence to keep people compliant and stop them exposing anything. He's actually pleading not guilty to all of the charges against him. But recently many disturbing videos are resurfacing again online. These showed the rapper himself making some really weird claims. In one live stream recording from 2020, P. Diddy appears with a young female on screen. He tells everyone that he recently adopted her. On the stream, he tells the girl, seemingly named Ava, to tell the viewers how he adopted her. She states she was on the street and Papa Combs decided he would like to be a caring man, so then he saw me and decided to pick me up and said come inside and play with his kids. P. Diddy and other adults in the background can be seen laughing. The rapper then states, I know this is like borderline suspect, and then laughs and says, I adopted you like Madonna adopted kids. This may be just a funny skit that they're doing, but I feel like this is in very bad taste. P. Diddy never officially, legally adopted anyone called Ava. Regardless of the intentions behind this clip, it's very uncomfortable to watch. There's also a disturbing video circulating of him with a very young Justin Bieber. Justin was underage at the time and P. Diddy states that he has custody of him for the evening. He says he can't disclose what the pair will be up to that night, but states that it would be every 15-year-old guy's dream. There's also another video with a much older Justin Bieber and P. Diddy greeting each other. Now Justin appears quite subdued and P. Diddy appears to ask him a question in which he shakes his head. Some people say they then believe that P. Diddy pats Justin down to see if he's wearing a wire. Amongst all this controversy, Beyonce, who is said to have been very close with P. Diddy at least for a period of time, has actually lost over 4 million followers on social media. This is said to be due to her perceived involvement in all of the stuff that's been going on with P. Diddy.
Whomever coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman Albert Fish, a slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This is a ghost story that actually happened to one of you guys. So Jenny grew up in an old country farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. And in that house, there was this spooky looking vent that went straight up to a room that no one in the house used. So one day, when Jenny's around 4 years old, she starts hearing a man's voice coming from the vent calling to her. She doesn't know any better, so she starts talking back to the voice who's asking her questions about herself. But here's the crazy thing. Prior to this happening, Jenny's uncle had taken his life. And Jenny claims that the voice coming from the vent sounded exactly like his. Jenny asks the man where he is, and he says that he's in a room that she can't see. So she runs up to the abandoned room, but there's no one inside. Is this supernatural, or was there really a grown man upstairs talking to a child? We talk about this and another ghost story on the Haunted Houses episode of my podcast.
Larry Nassar was a doctor for USA Gymnastics and uploaded several videos to his website demonstrating various sports techniques. And while these exercises look professional, many of them were totally made up so Larry could touch girls on the team. And when these allegations were brought forth in 2015, the FBI knew exactly what Larry was doing to child gymnasts. However, several agents helped him cover it up, going as far as falsifying the testimonies of his victims. And while no one at the FBI was punished, in 2017, Larry was arrested and accused of abusing over 300 minors. The following video takes place during his second day in court, when a father of 3 victims decides to speak up.
Grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon.
Our legal system.
Well, I'm gonna have to
Dr. Larry Nassar is given 10 counts of child abuse and is sentenced to 175 years in prison.
This is why these old cathedrals freak me out. So in Loudun, France in the 1600s, there was this cathedral. And one day, all of the nuns that worked there were complaining about having the same nightmare. All of them were seeing this shadowy figure that they referred to as the cloth man. He would appear angelic at first, but then would quickly turn demonic. This was terrifying the nuns, but it started getting so much worse. See, after these nightmares started happening, the nuns started showing symptoms of demonic possession. Mass hysteria broke out, and some of the nuns were able to bend over backwards so their shoulders were touching their ankles. It was also said that others were caught levitating. But these nuns thought they knew who was doing this to them. The head priest at this cathedral was a man by the name of Father Grandier, and he was accused of practicing black magic. He was eventually burned at the stake, but they were not able to exorcise the demons out of the nuns. And in fact, many of the men who tried to perform exorcisms suffered horrible fates, even claiming that Grandier's ghost was tormenting them from beyond the grave.
This man had his car stolen but was able to track it down using an Apple AirTag. Now, what he does next may actually put him in prison. Apple AirTags were created to help people find their personal items like their wallets, keys, and bags by attaching the AirTag to the item and then locating it through Find My app. On March 29th, a man whose name has not been released called police to report his Chevy Silverado missing from his home. He took matters into his own hands and tracked his truck using an Apple AirTag and found it 20 miles away at a shopping mall parking lot. Andrew Herrera, the man who allegedly stole the truck, was inside the vehicle and was shot in the head by the truck owner. Now, the truck owner does claim that he saw a weapon in Andrew's possession before firing his gun at him. Andrew did pass away due to his injuries, and now the truck owner may be charged with murder. Police encourages the public to wait for them and avoid taking matters into their own hands because you just never know what's going to happen.
This woman allegedly shot her husband when he asked for a divorce. Christina Pasqualetto from Arizona had apparently been trying to save her marriage. It may be a little bit more difficult now. On the 20th of September, the 62-year-old woman allegedly drove to the home that she shared with her estranged husband, John. She reportedly drove around about midnight and the pair got into an argument over their marriage. John told her that he wanted a divorce, whereas she did not. At this point, John said that he was in bed and Christina allegedly pulled out a weapon and shot him. The 80-year-old was able to defend himself and knock her down so that the gun fell out of her hand. He was luckily then able to flee round to the neighbour's house and get them to call the police. Police raced round and found John with a gunshot wound to his wrist. He was taken to a local hospital for treatment. Now, John alleges that he changed the locks of the house before the incident but had noticed items from the house going missing. John accuses Christina of forging a check from him for $10,000. She has admitted to forgery and theft. She has been charged for this and also for attempted first-degree murder and aggravated assault.
Some of you may already know about the murder house that's in my neighborhood. Built in 1925, this house was home to the infamous Los Feliz murders. It's also where John Mulaney caught a bad vibe. In the early morning of December 6, 1959, cardiologist Dr. Harold Perelson killed his wife with a ball-peen hammer before turning it on his 3 children. Luckily, all the kids were able to escape after one of their screams woke the others, but Dr. Perelson died after he took a cocktail of pills and laid back in bed with his wife. The scariest part of this case was captured by photographer Alexis Vaughn years later, when it was revealed that the state of the house remained untouched for decades. Rumor has it that the same Christmas presents from that night remained under the tree until 2015. You can see here that after the house was unable to sell on the market, a lot of the same toys, clothes, and appliances remained in the house untouched from that very night. I went to take a look for myself because the house remains abandoned even today. I wanted to see if there was anything I could see, and the house is still as frightening as ever. So what do you think? Do you see anything?
This is the disappearance of 33-year-old Ella Goody. Ella Goody went missing on March 9th, 2022 while working a shift as a Lyft driver in Louisiana. Ella just started working as a driver in the beginning of 2022, and even though she didn't like the idea of strangers in her car, she became comfortable with it pretty quick. Ella's best friend Felicia said that Ella began doing ride shares without the app in order to make more money. Felicia spoke to Ella the day before she disappeared on Tuesday, March 8th. Then she called her on Wednesday and was unable to get a hold of her, and by Thursday, Felicia became extremely worried when Ella didn't get back to her. Felicia then called Ella's children and they told her that their mom told them she would be making a trip to Texas and would be back by that night, but Ella never returned. By March 11th, Ella was reported missing and her black 2012 Audi Q5 was later found 13 hours away in St. Joseph, Missouri. By May 3rd, her disappearance transitioned from a missing persons case to a homicide investigation. Investigators later found out that Ella was seen driving her car with a passenger named Brandon Francisco. 2 weeks after Ella vanished, Brandon was arrested for an unrelated case in 2018, which included second-degree murder. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Brandon was previously serving a 10-year sentence for attempted murder of his then-wife, and he continues to be a person of interest in Ella's disappearance.
A woman was decapitated and hidden in a suitcase by the last person anyone expected. This is one of the most gruesome UK crime cases I've heard in a long time. Deborah Chong was a devout Christian. She was a kind and sweet-natured woman. She warmed to Gemma Mitchell when the pair met through their local church in North London. Gemma was also a spiritual person who seemed to have good family values, and she lived with her mum and sister. Unfortunately, Deborah suffered with her mental health, and as their friendship grew, Deborah felt like she could trust Gemma. Gemma gave her support and even offered her services as an osteopath. When Gemma was struggling to afford refurbishments on her family home, Deborah actually kindly offered to lend £200,000 to help out. However, what started off as a kind gesture would prove to be fatal. Deborah understandably had second thoughts about lending such a large amount of money. After informing Gemma that she'd changed her mind, she would go on to suffer a hideous death at the hands of her supposed friend. After killing Deborah, Gemma put her decapitated body in a suitcase. She then drove to Devon to hide the suitcase in the woods. Body in the Suitcase, The Murder of Deborah Chong is out now on Crime and Investigation Play. The two-part series explores this hideous case, including fascinating interviews with Gemma's mum, Hilary. She still maintains her daughter's innocence to this day. Investigators explore this fascinating crime and examine the court case in this eye-opening documentary. UK viewers can use my code Charlie50 via the Crime and Investigation Play website to get 50% off. The app is ad-free, it works on all devices, and you can download documentaries to watch anytime on the go. Now, the 50% off offer applies to all sign-up options. The best offer is the yearly membership, which works out at less than 30p a week. To enter the code, click on the link in my bio and sign up via the website. Once you've registered and used the code, you can then download the app to your device and start watching.
These are the final moments of 24-year-old Colleen Ritzer's life. She had absolutely no idea that she was being followed to the bathroom by one of her 14-year-old math students. He was armed with a box cutter. Colleen was a bright, friendly, popular math teacher at Danvers High School in Massachusetts. On October 22, 2013, Colleen had stayed late after school to offer extra help to any students that might need it. One of those students was Philip Chisholm. He'd recently moved to Massachusetts from Tennessee, with his parents going through a messy divorce. He was quiet and shy, and when Colleen asked him about the move, he became upset and changed the subject. On this particular day, Philip had come to school armed with a box cutter, gloves, a ski mask, and multiple changes of clothes. Just before 3 p.m, Colleen left the classroom to go to the bathroom, and Philip followed shortly after. He checked the hallways were clear, and then pulled his hood up over his head and followed Colleen into the bathroom. Philip attacked Colleen from behind, stabbing her 16 times. He then raped her and then cut her throat with the box cutter, before leaving the bathroom absolutely covered in Colleen's blood. He changed his clothes and then re-entered the bathroom with a large recycling bin, which he loaded Colleen's body into, and then took it out of the school and into the woods. Armed with Colleen's credit card, he then calmly went to eat some food and watch a movie. Colleen was soon reported missing, as was Philip when he hadn't returned from school. Philip was found walking along the side of a highway, still armed with the box cutter. When police asked whose blood was on it, he simply said, "The girl's." Colleen's body was found in the woods shortly after, and Philip was charged with her murder. He pleaded not guilty, and his defence team tried to argue that he was psychotic. But due to the evidence and the fact that Philip had come to school that day armed with the box cutter, gloves and ski mask, proved that it was a premeditated murder, and he was found guilty and sentenced to 40 to 60 years.
The tragic death of Glee actor Corey Monteith was shocking when it happened back in 2013, so let's talk about it. So if you don't remember Corey, he was one of the main characters on the TV show Glee. He played Finn Hudson. He was also in a number of different movies, including Final Destination 3. And at the time of his death, he really was an up-and-coming star in Hollywood. I mean, Glee was one of the biggest shows on television. I remember watching it when I was in high school. But sadly, on July 13th, 2013, Corey would be found dead in his hotel room in Vancouver, Canada. So leading up to his death, Corey had been staying at this hotel in Vancouver for 7 nights. He was scheduled to check out after his 7th night in the morning, but when hotel staff noticed that he hadn't left his room yet, people were sent up to check on him. That's when staff members entered Corey's room and discovered his unresponsive body lying on the floor. So initially, people didn't know what had happened to Corey. People thought for a second it could have been foul play related, but when the autopsy report came back, it became clear what had happened. So in the period before his death, Corey had actually checked into rehab. He had struggled with substance abuse issues in the past, but people thought he had gotten better and overcome them. But the toxicology report revealed that Corey had fatal levels of heroin and alcohol in his body at the time of his death, in addition to trace amounts of morphine and codeine. There was also a spoon and needle discovered next to his body in his hotel room. The 5th season of Glee was actually supposed to air at the end of that month in July of 2013, but after consulting with Lea Michele, who played Finn's love interest on the show, they decided to postpone the premiere until August of that year. The 3rd episode of that season, titled The Quarterback, actually dealt with the death of Corey's character Finn on the show. And obviously, with everybody involved in the production of the show, this was really hard to shoot and see premiering because of what had just happened so recently in real life. Now, something I do have to mention here is the strange circumstances surrounding some of the stars of Glee's deaths. You have Corey Monteith, who died of a sudden drug overdose. You have Naya Rivera, who died drowning in an incident. And you also have Mark Salling, who played Puck on the show, who died at age 35 after taking his own life after being found guilty of the possession of CP. Regardless, though, this was such a tragedy. It's so sad that Corey was lost. He could have been so big in Hollywood nowadays, but RIP to him.
9-year-old Jessica Lunsford was kidnapped from her home and she was buried alive while clutching her favourite soft toy. Her murder is one of the most horrific ones I've ever heard. Jessica was born on October 6, 1995. She loved to sing, excelled in school, and liked to ride on the back of her dad's motorbike. On January 24, 2005, Jessica's dad Mark heard Jessica's alarm going off in her room, so he went to check on her, only Jessica wasn't there. She was missing along with her favourite stuffed toy, a blue dolphin. Her school clothes were still neatly laid out and her bedroom window was closed, so Mark went to check the front door and found it unlocked. Jessica was reported missing immediately. A search for Jessica soon began, but an Amber Alert couldn't be issued, as it requires law enforcement to describe the vehicle that might have been used in the abduction, and there were no witnesses, so that information couldn't be provided. Volunteers, officers on horseback, a police helicopter and a dive team were all out searching for Jessica, but weeks went by with absolutely no leads. Police eventually enlisted the help of child abduction experts, and 208 sex offenders within 50 miles of Jessica's home were identified. This led police to a man named John Cooey, who was a registered sex offender. He lived 2 miles from Jessica's home, but often stayed with his sister, who actually lived within eyeshot of Jessica's front door. John was questioned and agreed to a lie detector, and when the results came back, he looked at the officer and said, "You don't need to tell me the results, I already know what they are," and he confessed to the abduction and murder of 9-year-old Jessica. He told officers where they could find Jessica's body, and it was discovered that she'd been buried just 200 yards from her front door, in John's sister's backyard. The true horror of Jessica's abduction and murder soon came to light. Trigger warning here because her murder is horrific. John said that he'd entered Jessica's home at 3 a.m. and found her in her bedroom. He'd woken her up and told her not to scream. He'd then taken her to his sister's house, where he'd kept her for the weekend in a closet, only bringing her out to rape her and taunt her with articles showing that everybody was out looking for her. When John decided that he was done with Jessica, he told her to climb into a large bin bag, saying that he'd take her home but didn't want anyone to see her. In actual fact, she was never going home. She climbed into that bin bag thinking that the horror was over, but he tied it up, threw her into a pre-dug grave, and buried her alive. When Jessica was discovered, she was clutching her dolphin tightly, and she'd managed to poke 2 fingers through a hole in the bin bag in an attempt to escape. She'd suffocated to death alone in the dark and absolutely terrified. John Cooey was found guilty and sentenced to death in 2005, but he actually died of natural causes while in prison just 4 years later.
This murderous musician could be the worst man in country music history. Meet Spade Cooley. So back in the day, he was a Western swing musician, he led big bands, he was on TV, he was an actor. And his song, Shame on You, actually was the #1 song on the country music charts back in the 1940s. So even though he occasionally sang, Spade was really known for his fiddle playing abilities. And over the years, he worked his way to the top of Hollywood. He was friends with old cowboy actor Roy Rogers, he had his own show in Los Angeles on TV. And a lot of people credit Spade Cooley with being the king of Western swing. But in April of the year 1961, the world's opinion of Spade Cooley would change overnight. So before they were married, Spade Cooley's second wife, Ella Mae, was actually a singer in his band. They eventually fell in love, got married in 1945, and would go on to have 3 children together. Now, from the outside looking in, their marriage seemed pretty perfect, but on the inside, it wasn't as good. As it turns out, throughout their entire marriage, Spade had been cheating on Ella with multiple partners, and Ella had actually cheated on Spade, reportedly with cowboy actor Roy Rogers. So in 1961, Spade Cooley actually filed for divorce and requested custody of the couple's 3 children. But on April 3rd, something disturbing would happen. On that day, something snapped inside of Spade. And while he was at home with his wife and children, he forced his 14-year-old daughter to watch him murder her mother. And this murder was brutal. Spade repeatedly bashed Ella's head into the floor. He stomped up and down on her stomach, killing her, and then he put out a lit cigarette on her body to make sure that she was dead. Keep in mind, this was all in front of his 14-year-old daughter. He forced her to watch. Now, obviously, Spade was arrested shortly afterwards. He was eventually found guilty of killing Ella. And there were 2 ways his trial could have ended at the time. He could have been sent to the death chamber, the gas chambers in prison, or he would have had a life sentence. Shockingly, though, he was only given life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 7 years. And this is where it gets crazy. So he served those 7 years. In his 8th year of his prison sentence, all of his Hollywood friends lobbied the then Governor Ronald Reagan of California for his release. And what do you know, the State Review Board actually granted him parole after only serving 8 years in prison for the brutal murder of his wife. So a few months after the board agreed to parole Spade from prison, he was putting on a concert. He was actually let out of prison for the night for a 72-hour period to put on a show for the Deputy Sheriff's Association. Yes, law enforcement officers actually wanted this guy to get on stage and play for them. But while he was backstage on an intermission, Spade Cooley suffered a fatal heart attack. And that's where he died. He never technically made it out of prison. I just think this story's crazy. I'd never really read about it before. And it's just shocking that they were actually going to let this guy out of prison.
There has been an absolutely horrific murder this week that was live streamed on Instagram. This case is extremely disturbing, so please be warned before watching. On Friday, 12,000 people watched a Bosnian bodybuilder kill his wife on Instagram Live. 35-year-old Nermin had been abusing his wife during their marriage, and the pair had a young child. On Friday morning, he took to Instagram Live to tell his followers that they could witness a live killing. Absolutely horrifically, he turns the camera to his ex, whose face is completely covered in blood and disfigured. He calls her a derogatory name and blames her for her own death because she reported him to police. Disturbingly, you can hear the child crying in the background. He then tells his followers that he's the child's father and his ex had hidden the toddler from him for over a week and reported him to police for DV. So, in my opinion, yes, she's taking steps to keep her and her child safe from you. After shooting his wife in the head on Instagram, he then goads his followers saying, "Someone come and save the child." A police chase then began and he went on a shooting rampage. He continued to film and tells his viewers that he's killed 2 other people who actually turned out to be an innocent man and his young son. He also wounded a police officer, another man and a woman while on the run. He ended up unaliving himself on the same day. This mysterious case absolutely does not sit right with me. Someone knows something and has not come forward. On the 12th of July 2015, 18-year-old Tiffany and her parents attended a graduation party in New Jersey. At around 9 p.m, one of Tiffany's friends spoke to her parents and claimed that they were really annoyed because Tiffany had used their debit card without permission. Tiffany initially denied this to her friend, but then did admit this to her mum Diane a little bit later. At this point, they were all outside Tiffany's house and Diane went inside to find her husband. When she returned outside of the house, Tiffany had vanished. Now, they were able to see Tiffany on the deer cameras that they had outside the house. She appears to be walking down the driveway in her normal clothing and white headband. When they tried to find Tiffany, they actually made a terrifying discovery. Her phone was lying on the floor at the bottom of the driveway. Immediately, they knew something was wrong as Tiffany never had her phone out of her sight. At 11:30 p.m, her family called the police. Little did they know, 27 minutes earlier, Tiffany had been hit by a train. Frustratingly, pretty much straight away, police presumed this death to be a self-unaliving. However, that just didn't seem to fit with the evidence presented. All of Tiffany's family and friends said how much of an upbeat person she was and that she was really happy at the time. She was making plans for the future, and the autopsy also showed that she had a clean toxicology report. Now, in the deer cam footage, she was fully clothed, but when she was found, she was just in her underwear with no shoes on. Upsettingly, 2 weeks after her death, Tiffany's mum actually found her missing trainers and headband more than a mile away from the tracks. Could someone have murdered Tiffany and then dumped her body on the train tracks to make it look like she did this herself? Tiffany's parents certainly think so. They definitely suspect some foul play was involved.
So this is how the police found out.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, isn't that? Spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Gonna learn the consequence of being incompetent. Mental health is confidence, dreams and some honestness. I'm not here to save the day, that's for you to take away. I could play a million mind games, but instead I say something not illogical, something that is topical. Rub it on and watch it go, make yourself unstoppable. Dreams are irresponsible, but they're always possible. If you just believe, you could be so remarkable.
Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
This case made me terrified to go to the cinema. This is the case of the horror in Screen 9. James Holmes was raised in California. His mum was a nurse and his dad was a scientist. From a young age, he was experiencing night terrors and allegedly actually tried to take his own life when he was just 11 years old. He was apparently obsessed with guns and weapons and had dreamed of becoming a mass murderer. Between May and July 2012, he legally bought 4 guns. Background checks were conducted and he was allowed the weapons. He also bought spike strips, which, if you don't know, pop the tyres of cars if they chase after you. On July the 19th, just hours before tragedy would unfold, James mailed his notebook to his psychiatrist. Inside the notebook, James detailed his plans to kill. The notebook was actually discovered later on undelivered. Just prior to entering a cinema in Aurora, James rang a crisis line to tell them about his plans to kill. However, the call was disconnected after just 9 seconds. At the midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises, CCTV captures James walking into the cinema. He walks into Screen 9, props open the door, and then walks back out again. Shockingly, he goes to his car and gets guns out and gas canisters. He re-entered the screen at about 12:38 PM and set off 2 gas canisters. When he entered Screen 9 again, he immediately opens fire on the audience, instantly killing 10 people. 2 others later died in hospital from their injuries. An additional 70 people were injured. This was an absolutely packed out cinema. James also shot at people as they scrambled to exit the screen. His youngest victim was a 6-year-old girl. Witnesses said this all unfolded as there was actually a gunfight on the screen, and initially they all thought it was special effects and just part of the film. Police were actually on the scene very quickly after the first 911 call. James surrendered to the police and was arrested in the car park. He was apparently very calm when he was arrested and told police that he had booby-trapped his apartment. When police investigated his apartment, this was found out to be true. He was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences.
The day after Sheila and Rachel ended Skylar's life, Rachel, the next morning, went to church camp. But what Sheila did is quite literally disgusting. The next day, Skylar's parents were freaking out. They had no idea where she was. And so her mom began to call Skylar's friends and family. And when Skylar's mom called Sheila, Sheila went over to Skylar's house, met with her mom and dad, sat on Skylar's bed, cried with her mother, wondering when Skylar was going to come home. So she ended her life the night prior, then was sitting on Skylar's bed, consoling her mom, telling her that everything was going to be okay and that Skylar would come home and that they would find her. And not only did she do that, but she literally tweeted, and I quote, "We really did go on 3." And that to me just shows how messed up of a person she is. And when Rachel came back from church camp, they continued to put up this whole facade of, oh my gosh, where's our best friend? What happened to her? Where is she? For about 5 months. These girls were full on in the fall when school started, went back to school. They were walking around high school like absolutely nothing. And granted, they were suspects and they were being interrogated throughout the school year. And there were rumors going around Morgantown that they did it, but nothing was ever solidified. But in December of 2012, Rachel had an insane mental breakdown. Then a week later, she called her lawyers and she said, I need to tell you something. And that's when she told the cops that they did it.